but you couldn't get papers. At that point in time, they would not give you papers. So in 1951, Mr. Olin bought this, developed it into a conservation area, shooting preserve, hunting preserve, this and that. And in the Winchester bylaws, it says, signed by John M. Olin, chairman of the board of Olin Corporation. As long as Winchester is a part of Olin, Nilo will be here. Now, does anybody, what is Nilo? What's that?
Olin backwards.
Okay. He called it the farm. Okay, he called his staff together in 1952 and said, we got to name the farm. I'm tired of calling it the farm. And there's going to be a prize, a cash prize rewarded. So a guy by the name of Stan Koenig comes into Mr. Olin's office and he says, I have an idea. I think we ought to call the farm, now there was a cash prize to come. I think we ought to call the farm Nilo. Mr. Olin said, Nilo? He said, yeah, that's Olin spelled backwards. Mr. Olin said, well, I'll think about it. He said, well, let me remind you, it's lion spelled sideways. Here's the check for you. Here's your money, Stan Koenig. So they named this Nilo, and it's been Nilo ever since 1951. 532 acres to start with, and it's a little larger now. There have been 3 managers. Now you've met Dwayne Pitts, right?
Right here.
Yep. Oh, what? I don't have my glasses on. Thank you. Dwayne, but Roger, he took Roger Jones's place. Prior to that, an icon that just passed away a few years ago, last year before last, Leo George. That was Mr. Olin's first manager, and Mr. Olin hired Leo George. Do you know where from?
I do not.
He was the manager of the Bush Wildlife Management. And he said, how much are you making? He said, well, this is what I can pay you. So Leo George ended up here. Okay, Cotton for Shell. Who was Cotton for Shell?
Dog trainer.
What?
Best dog trainer here.
He was the dog trainer. Mr. Olin started. Mr. Olin bought a dog from a guy from St. Louis. The dog came from Nebraska originally. The dog had distemper when he was a pup, almost passed away. Mr. Olin was a field trial judge and saw this dog do some stuff, and he said, you know what? Cotton, I want that dog. He said, what? You want that dog? He said, that's a little lad. He said, I don't care, I want that dog. Mr. Olin paid a world record price for his dog. I think the year, don't quote me on the year, I think it was 1950, 51. $6,500 for a Labrador 2-year-old, maybe 3-year-old dog. King Buck. And you know the rest of the story, right? How many of you have seen this monument over there by the, have you been over there?
No, but I'm going over there. I'm too
Make
busy.
sure you get your picture taken there. I interviewed Maynard Reese. Maynard Reese, you've seen the picture of King
Touchdown.
Buck with the
Yep.
mallard drake in his mouth, right? You've seen that?
Yes.
Okay. I interviewed Maynard Reese. Maynard Reese, one of the most famous outdoor artists there is. He's still alive, 99 years old.
Wow.
Lives in Des Moines, Iowa. That's where his studio is. Mr. Olin had Maynard Reese come here. Maynard Reese had won two duck stamp competitions. He hired Maynard Reese to come here for a week. After 3 days, Maynard Reese went to Mr. Olin and he said, Mr. Olin, I gotta go home. He said, what, you got a problem? He said, yeah, your damn dog's driving me nuts. Here's the sketchbook. They picked out that picture of King Buck with the mallard drake in his mouth. And Mr. Olin said, we need to submit that to the duck stamp competition. They admitted it. It was selected in 1959-60 federal duck stamp, the first dog to ever appear on an American stamp.
And the only one on the duck stamp.
King Buck. Mr. Olin, this is what I was told. I don't have any clue that it's true, but he called the chairman of the duck stamp committee in Bethesda, Maryland, and said, there have been some complaints about my dog being on the duck stamp. The guy said, what's the complaint? It's the only stamp in American history that features a dead bird. So the guy said, well, we'll consider that at our committee meeting. They called Mr. Olin back and said, Mr. Olin, don't worry. The rules have been changed. Federal duck stamps will now say waterfowl only. And you've seen the picture of King Buck with the original that Maynard Reese did of that painting hangs over the president's desk at the Winchester corporate office down off the, and what's the price? What do you think, Dwayne?
I'd hate to put a price on it.
I'd hate to put a price on it. And there are copies, there are copies made all over, but that was from Maynard Reese. Okay, does anybody know anything about John M. Olin? He was born and raised in Alton, Illinois, okay, on State Street. And he went to Cornell University just like his father. His father had moved here and started the Equitable Powder Company in East Alton. Okay, Mr. Olin went to Cornell, so did his two brothers, got their chemical degrees, went to work for their dad in East Alton, and John Olin became the vice president of the Equitable Powder Company. And in the First World War, they loaded ammunition and became very, 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 very popular and very extremely wealthy in that regard. And John Olin became the vice president of the corporation. Okay, in 1931, Winchester in Bethesda, Maryland. No. I got me. I can't remember the town out there on the East Coast.
Connecticut.
Yeah, Connecticut. Winchester went bankrupt. John Olin went to his father and said, you know what? We need to buy Winchester. His dad said, we're in the midst of a depression. Where are we going to get the money? He asked his dad, F.W. Olin, if I can get that money, can we buy Winchester? He said, it's your call. Mr. Olin went to some of the investors in St. Louis and borrowed $5 million, bought Winchester out of bankruptcy, and moved it to East Alton, Illinois. Do you know what the name of the ammunition company was before?
Winchester Western.
It was Western, and it was called Western Cartridge Company because it was the most Western corporation that did loading in America. The most Western. Okay, they changed the name to Winchester Western, went into the Second World War. Mr. Olin became the president of Winchester Western. They dropped the name of Western, and because of one round of ammunition, Mr. Olin's company, he employed 34,000 people in East Alton and the St. Louis Small Arms plant. One round of ammunition they sold to the Allies and the U.S. Armed Forces 15,650,000,000 rounds of 350 centerfire. Stop and think about that. 15,650,000,000 of one round. And according to Fortune magazine, after the Second World War, John M. Olin was one of the 10 wealthiest men in America. all because of the ammunition and that. And if you would ask Mr. Olin on properties all over America, Nilo is still in existence in Albany, Georgia. Oh, that's his quail plantation, and it's called Nilo. 11,000 acres, and his step granddaughter still lives there. He owned all kind of things. I have photographs over here. Normally, when my wife and I make these presentations, we have a computer that shows the images, the pictures up on there. And if I say anything about the horse, the Winchester logo, in 1913, a starving artist by the name of Philip Godwin went to Winchester and said, "You do not have a logo. I have this idea," and it's a rider on the horse holding a Winchester rifle, right? You've all seen that. Okay. When Mr. Olin bought Winchester, he had to buy the logo also. And he always told his friends, he said, if you've got a good imagination, you'll see a black dog following that horse. So, they never changed it. And, again, the photographs are over here. You're welcome to look at them if you want to and have time. Normally our presentation, my wife and I's presentation lasts about, they say, Larry, how did you ever get started doing this? I love history. I don't know if you like history or not, but one thing is for sure, you are now part of history because you're here on the grounds. And if you want to read the story that I wrote for Wildfowl and several other outdoor magazines, and it's still on the internet, you can get it on your handheld phone. One Man's Pride and Joy. If you would have gone to Mr. Olin and said, where do you want to go today? Now, an elder at our church adopted my son as a Christian brother. And that's where John Olin's shooting stick came from, along with all kind of other memorabilia. Mr. Romer was Mr. Olin's personal valet for 60 years. And when Mr. Olin in 1975 gave the mansion to the state of Illinois and moved out on the East Coast, well, he moved to St. Louis first. Anybody ever been to Warson Hills Country Club? Okay, that's in St. Louis. That was Mr. Olin's second favorite place. But if you would ask Mr. Olin, where do you want to go today? Where do you want to leave the office and go? You know where he'd say? I want to go out here, right here. That was of all the places he had. So I could go on and on and on, but I'm not going to bother you any longer because you're ready to go. But any questions? Yeah.
What's the shooting stick made of? Is it hickory?
I have no idea.
That's pretty neat. It looks like it's, yeah.
But when John
It
Olin,
looks like it's bronze.
No, it's actually,
I know it
it's
is, but it
really,
looks bronze.
it's like a hickory stick.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Larry,